Are we watching the Montreal Canadiens spiral into becoming the next Buffalo Sabres? That's not hyperbole, folks. That's a legitimate question being asked by former players, analysts, and anyone who witnessed Tuesday night's absolute capitulation against the Ottawa Senators. A 5-2 defeat that could have easily been 8-2. A performance so lifeless, so devoid of competitive fire, that it's raised alarm bells throughout the organization and across the hockey world. The Canadiens didn't just lose a game. They look like a team that's forgotten what it means to wear the blue, blanc, et rouge. Tonight, we're diving deep into what's become a full-blown identity crisis in Montreal, and whether a potential blockbuster trade could be the lifeline this sinking ship desperately needs. Let's not sugarcoat this. Tuesday's performance against Ottawa was an embarrassment. The Senators dominated from start to finish, and the final score 5-2 actually flatters the Canadiens. Ottawa could have scored 8, 9, maybe 10 goals if they kept their foot on the gas. This wasn't a competitive hockey game. This was a clinic in what happens when a team loses its identity, its structure, and its will to compete. The defensive breakdowns were systematic. The goaltending? Shaky at best, catastrophic at worst. But here's what should terrify Canadiens management the most. The body language. Players skating with their heads down. No communication on the ice. No urgency. No desperation. No pride. This is a franchise with 24 Stanley Cup championships, the most storied organization in hockey history. And they look like a beer league team that had just met each other in the parking lot before the game. Enter Maxime Lapierre, former Canadiens forward, and someone who knows what it takes to succeed in Montreal. Lapierre didn't hold back in his post-game analysis, and his words should echo through the Bell Center like a fire alarm at 3 a.m. They look too cool for school, Lapierre said, cutting straight to the heart of the problem. This young Canadiens team is developing bad habits, losing their identity, and heading down a dangerous path in their rebuild. And Lapierre dropped a comparison that should make every Habs fan's blood run cold. The Buffalo Sabres. Think about that for a moment. The Sabres have been stuck in rebuild purgatory for over a decade. Year after year of high draft picks, young talent, and promises of the future is bright. And year after year of missing the playoffs. Developing a losing culture, and watching their best players either stagnate or demand trades out of town. That's the nightmare scenario for Montreal, and right now, they're sprinting toward it. Lapierre emphasized what this team desperately needs: accountability, structure, and veteran presence. Not just veterans who collect paychecks, veterans who set standards, who demand excellence, who refuse to accept mediocrity. The kind of players who grab young guys by the jersey and make them understand that this isn't junior hockey anymore. Let's talk about culture, because it's become the elephant in the room that nobody in the organization wants to acknowledge publicly. Culture isn't some abstract concept that sports psychologists invented to sell books. Culture is what happens when nobody's watching. It's how players prepare. It's how they respond to adversity. It's the standards they hold themselves and each other to. And right now, the Canadiens' culture is toxic. This isn't about talent. The Habs have skilled young players. Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, Uri Slavkovsky, Lane Hudson. These aren't scrubs. But talent without structure is just chaos. Skill without accountability is just wasted potential. The warning signs have been there all season. Inconsistent effort levels. Some nights they show up, most nights they don't. Defensive breakdowns. Not just individual mistakes, but systematic failures, lack of response when challenged. Teams push them around, and they fold goaltending instability. Is it the goalies or the defense? Probably both. No clear identity. What kind of team are they trying to be? This is how promising rebuilds die. This is how you waste high draft picks and end up stuck in the middle. Not bad enough to get top picks. Not good enough to compete. Just mediocre. Forever. Now, let's talk about a name that's been circulating around the league like wildfire. Kiefer Sherwood. The 30-year-old winger currently with the Vancouver Canucks is becoming one of the hottest trade commodities this season. And for good reason. Multiple contenders are reportedly interested. Dallas Stars, Colorado Avalanche, New Jersey Devils, Minnesota Wild, and yes, the Montreal Canadiens. The Canucks aren't in a rush to move him, but if Montreal is serious about addressing their culture crisis, they might need to make Vancouver an offer they can't refuse. Here's what Sherwood brings to the table. At $1.5 million for the remainder of the season, Sherwood is the definition of value. But it's not his contract that makes him attractive. It's his game. Before becoming known as a legitimate scoring threat this season, Sherwood built his reputation on grit, aggression, and relentless work ethic. He plays every shift like it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. This is a player who finishes every check block shots without hesitation, battles in corners like his life depends on it, brings energy that's contagious, sets a standard with his effort level. Sherwood isn't a first-line superstar. He's not going to be your leading scorer or power play quarterback, but he's exactly the type of player who can change a locker room. He's the guy who shows young players what professional hockey looks like. He's a veteran presence Lapierre was talking about. Here's where it gets interesting and where Kent Hughes and the Canadiens front office need to make a critical decision. What's the price for saving your rebuild? Sherwood isn't going to come cheap. Vancouver knows what they have, and with multiple teams interested, they can afford to be patient and wait for the best offer. The Canucks will likely ask for a second-round pick at minimum, possibly a prospect. Maybe more if there's a bidding war. Some will say that's too much for a 30-year-old winger who isn't a game-changing talent. And in a vacuum, they might be right. But context matters. The Canadiens aren't just acquiring a player. They're trying to save their culture. How do you quantify that? What's it worth to prevent your young core from developing losing habits? What's the value of showing your locker room that management is serious about establishing standards? How much would you pay to avoid becoming the next Buffalo Sabres? When you frame it that way, a second-round pick and a mid-level prospect starts to look like a bargain. The alternative is watching this talented young group continue to drift, continue to lose, continue to develop a culture of acceptance and mediocrity. And once that culture takes root, it's almost impossible to change without blowing everything up and starting over. Let's address the fundamental question that's haunting this organization. What kind of team are the Montreal Canadiens trying to be? Are they a skilled team that want to outscore opponents? Then why can't they defend? Are they a defensive team that grinds out wins? Then why do they get pushed around? Are they a young team learning and developing? Then why aren't veterans holding them accountable? Right now, they're none of these things. They're a team without identity, drifting through the season with no clear purpose or direction. And that's the most dangerous place for a rebuilding franchise to be. The great teams in this league, whether it's the Florida Panthers with their relentless forecheck, the Vegas Golden Knights with their depth and structure, or the Carolina Hurricanes with their systematic excellence, they all know exactly what they are. They have an identity, and every player on the roster either fits that identity or gets moved out. Montreal needs to figure out their identity, and they need to do it fast. Because every game they play without one is another game where bad habits become ingrained, where losing becomes acceptable, where the culture deteriorates further. Let's spend a moment on the Buffalo Sabre comparison, because it's not just a throwaway line. It's a genuine warning. Buffalo has been rebuilding since 2013. Let that sink in. 12 years of trusting the process. 12 years of high draft picks. 12 years of promising young players. And what do they have to show for it? They've drafted generational talents like Jack Eichel and Rasmus Dahlin. They've accumulated prospects. They've had multiple fresh starts with new coaches and general managers. And yet, they remain stuck in the basement of the NHL standings year after year. Why? Culture. The Sabres developed a losing culture that became self-perpetuating. Young players came in, learned bad habits from the veterans, and then became the veterans teaching bad habits to the next generation. It's a vicious cycle that's proven almost impossible to break. Jack Eichel, their former captain and franchise player, demanded a trade out of Buffalo. That's how bad it got. When your best player would rather have surgery and risk his career than stay with your organization, you have a culture problem. Montreal is dangerously close to that precipice. They're not there yet, but they can see it from where they're standing. And if they don't make dramatic changes soon, they'll find themselves in the same endless rebuild cycle that's consumed Buffalo. So what's the solution? How do the Canadiens pull themselves back from the brink? 1. Make a statement trade, acquire Kiefer Sherwood or someone like him. Show the locker room that management won't accept this level of play. Bring in a veteran who sets standards with his effort and accountability. 2. Establish non-negotiable standards. Head coach Martin St. Louis needs to draw lines in the sand. Certain things, effort, defensive responsibility, accountability, are non-negotiable. Players who don't meet those standards sit, regardless of talent or draft position. 3. Empower veteran leadership. Nick Suzuki is a captain, but he's only 25 years old. He needs support. The team needs more veteran voices who've been through playoff battles and know what it takes to win. 4. Define team identity. Management and coaching need to decide, what kind of team are we building? Then commit to that identity and make personnel decisions that support it. 5. Create accountability systems. Players need to know there are consequences for poor play and poor preparation, and rewards for those who consistently meet standards. 6. Address goaltending stability, whether it's through improved defensive structure or a goaltending change. This needs to be fixed. Unstable goaltending destroys confidence. None of this is rocket science, but it requires courage, commitment, and a willingness to make uncomfortable decisions. The question is, does this organization have what it takes? Here's the harsh reality. The Canadiens are running out of time to fix this. Not time in terms of the season, that's already lost, but time in terms of their rebuild window. Cole Caulfield is 23. Nick Suzuki is 25. Uri Slavkovsky is 20. Lane Hudson is 21. This is your core. These are the players who are supposed to lead you back to contention. But if they spend the next 2 or 3 years learning how to lose, learning that mediocrity is acceptable, developing bad habits and poor standards, you've wasted the most critical development years of their careers. You can't get that time back. You can't undo 3 years of cultural damage with one good trade deadline or one strong offseason. Culture is built day by day, shift by shift, practice by practice. And right now, the Canadiens are building the wrong culture. The trade deadline is February 28th. That's less than 3 months away. Kent Hughes needs to be working the phones right now, not just for Kiefer Sherwood, but for any veteran player who can help establish the culture this team desperately needs. This isn't about making the playoffs this year. This is about saving the future of the franchise. Let's zoom out for a moment and remember what we're talking about here. This is the Montreal Canadiens. 24 Stanley Cup championships. The most successful franchise in NHL history. A team that's supposed to represent excellence, tradition, and winning. The fans in Montreal don't just want a good team. They demand it. They live and breathe hockey in a way that few other markets can match. They deserve better than watching their team sleepwalk through games, showing no pride in the jersey they're wearing. This isn't just about wins and losses. It's about respect. Respect for the organization, respect for fans, respect for the history of the franchise. And right now, this team is showing none of that. Tuesday night's loss to Ottawa was embarrassing, yes, but it was also a wake-up call. Or at least it should be. The question is whether anyone in the organization is listening. The Montreal Canadiens stand at a crossroads. Down one path lies a future as a competitive, well-structured team with a strong culture and clear identity. Down the other lies years of mediocrity, wasted potential, and the dreaded comparison to Buffalo. Which path they take will be determined by the decisions made in the next few weeks and months. Will they acquire players like Kiefer Sherwood, who can help establish the culture they need? Will they hold players accountable for their effort and preparation? Will they define their identity and commit to it? Or will they continue to drift, hoping that talent alone will eventually be enough? Watching as a promising young core develops the wrong habits and learns to accept losing? The answer to those questions will determine not just this season, but the next decade of Canadiens hockey. One thing is certain. What they're doing right now isn't working. Change is needed, urgently. The Canadiens don't need just defense or goals. They need identity. They need culture. They need standards. And they need them now before it's too late. What do you think the Canadiens should do? Should they go all in on acquiring Kiefer Sherwood? Or is there another solution to their culture crisis? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to smash that like button if you want to see more hard-hitting analysis of what's really happening in the NHL.